And we're back with another episode of the Lakers Fast Break Podcast. It's NBA Observations, everyone. Truly appreciate you joining us. It's Gerald Glassford. Thanks again for watching this thing. Cannot help but say thank you for all the people who've watched our massive coverage of Luka Doncic heading to the West Coast and all of the views we've had. Just cannot say thank you enough for doing that. But if you haven't yet liked and subscribed, please like the video. Subscribe if you can. That helps the channel out big time. And remember, for a little inside information on the channel, also as well, shorts that are exclusive, videos dropped exclusively there, and more. Go ahead and become a member today for just $2.99 a month from your friends at the Lakers Fast Break Podcast. Well, it is NBA Observations, and a lot of small trades going on right now, including a trade target for the Lakers, much rumored, just went to Sacramento and Jonas Valanciunas for a couple of second-round picks and CD Sissoko, who, if depending on who you talk to, some may like, some may not like. So hopefully that Washington will get a chance to go ahead and see how he is, but getting a young player for the future and a couple second-round draft picks for Jonas. Jonas going to Sacramento as they rebuild their entire roster. There you go, right there. And there's, of course, we've seen Daniel Tice being moved to OKC because New Orleans is allergic to the tax. So they had to do that to get under the tax. So especially with their record, I wouldn't want to be in the tax. Say, oh, by the way, your team sucks and you get a bill for that. So absolutely would not want that in the slightest. We've seen other moves as well. But here today to go ahead and discuss some of the moves that have been done, his thoughts on the Luka trade, and what's upcoming for the NBA trade deadline. Good man indeed. Please go ahead and support him today on all of his outlets. Fear the Sword, covering the Cleveland Cavs. Also as well, the Palace of Pistons, not just the podcast you need to go ahead and check out on the Believe Network, but also as well, go ahead on his Substack, palaceofpistons.com. It is Mike Anguilano. Mike, great to have you here, my friend. Welcome back. It's been a while. I know you stopped by during all the Luka mayhem, and I appreciate it. And I've been trying to get you back on ever since, and I'm just so thankful that you're on here today, my friend.
Glad to be back. Yes, I wanted to see what all of the Lakers outlets are saying about Luka Doncic, so I had to tune in. Definitely very exciting for you guys. It's not every day that a 25-year-old perennial MVP gets offered to you for
right in the lap.
Unequal value.
Exactly.
Yeah.
When you look at it, absolutely does not look like unequal value. The Lakers, if he continues on his career trajectory, it will not prove to be an even trade. I get that, but we've heard all the particulars on that. But yes, your thoughts on this trade as a whole, Luka coming to LA, all the stuff behind it. You've heard all the inside scuttlebutt as I have. You've seen all the reports, the varying and whatnot. In fact, of the fans on both sides, as far as the Mavs and the Lakers, amazingly enough, Mike, split on it. There is a split here in LA as far as, absolutely. If you checked out our audience here on a daily basis, there is a split I'd say about 70-30, 60-40, 70-30. I'd say 70-30 as far as not liking the trade to liking the trade. So 70 as far as mostly liking it. But your thoughts on this massive trade, this massive game-changing trade that seems like I did as far as by JPEG the other day, dominoes falling, and that was the first big domino to fall this NBA trade deadline season.
Yeah, a domino that nobody knew was on the board either.
No.
Nobody expected that. Here on the East Coast, I was getting ready to go to sleep, and then I was inexplicably awake for the next 90 minutes, combing through what just happened. It's hopefully going to be turned into a book one day, because I do think that there's a lot more to this that is not being said and won't be said and can't be said, for one reason or another. Tim McMahon from ESPN's article about Dallas slowly getting rid of all of Luka's friends, his trainers, his conditioning specialists, his dietitians, things like that. And then all of a sudden they're gone and the Lakers rehire all of them.
And he wrote a book. he wrote a book on Luka, so he might have to make an addendum to it now.
Yes, he said he has to write a final chapter, but it's currently, I think, for pre-order through Barnes and Noble. So very interesting stuff. I mean, it's came out of nowhere. The reactions on the sideline from players around the league seeing the trade is hilarious. It is the most shocking transaction I think we'll see for a long time. And to have the Lakers involved, is typical Lakers exceptionalism, as they say. It seems like a baton handing off kind of moment as well. LeBron at 40, going to be giving way to Luka at some point, we think. So, maybe they have to build around LeBron after Luka retires because he just won't. He's just totally incapable of it. But very, very mind blowing trade that really, I think, changed the value of players across the NBA.
Once again, I have Mike Anguilano on. Please go ahead and stop on by his great places of wealth and knowledge on the NBA, including Fear the Sword. Go ahead and check out that podcast covering the Cleveland Cavs. He's also host of the Palace of Pistons podcast on the Believe Network. And of course, he's got a Substack you need to go ahead and subscribe to as well at palaceofpistons.com. And we will, before this show ends, cover what the needs are for both those teams and what you think that they might be getting as it gets closer to the trade deadline. And yes, I do have Twitter on the lowdown to see just in case where we're going to be. So I will ask you this though, my friend. Some of the
Mhm.
trades that are out there under the radar. You and I both like the Luka trade and what that offers for the Lakers, but under the radar, the De'Aaron Fox trade to San Antonio this morning. Kyle Kuzma for Chris Middleton. Jonas Valanciunas just went for a couple seconds, and Sissoko to Sacramento after Sissoko just went into the Zach LaVine dream trade.
Yep.
I feel sorry for the kid. Hey, welcome to the NBA. You're going here, you're going there. As far as the part of that Sacramento trade to San Antonio, of course, Zach LaVine going there, and Chicago, whoopee, they get their own pick back. Your thoughts on what the trade action has been so far, but a lot of interesting trades so far. And again, NBA trade deadline, despite what many people thought, what we even thought here on the show with the CBA constrictions and all that, we thought it might be a very tough NBA trade deadline. Boy, we were really wrong.
Yeah, we were wrong. That Luka Doncic trade really changed the calculus for a lot of teams. The De'Aaron Fox trade, I think, is a great move for San Antonio. They wasted no time in getting a fellow star next to Victor Wembanyama. Whether you feel De'Aaron Fox is a star, he wasn't named to the All-Star game this year. I think he still is one of the better young point guards in the league. It seems like a good handoff. They didn't have to give up Stephon Castle. They didn't have to give up Devin Vassell. It's a great move. Keeps their powder dry. I hate when people say that, but in this instance, it's definitely true. They have all their picks back, or at least most of them, and they still have some young players to play around with if they do want to go get that third star. And I think De'Aaron Fox is playing tonight for the Spurs. I saw he was out there practicing. So it's a great move. Sacramento continues to be weird and just weird. I mean, they had an offer sheet to Levine, what, in 2018 or something, and
Yes.
Bulls ended up matching it, or 2019 or something. They finally get him. They're basically remaking the Bulls over in Sacramento, pairing Levine and DeRozan once again.
Yeah, Chicago
I
Bulls West.
Yes, which is not a good spot to be in for either of those teams. And then the Bulls are finally leaning into the rebuild. It's about 4 years too late, but they're leaning into it. I would imagine that Nikola Vucevic will be next, wherever he is going to go. Maybe Golden State, maybe the Lakers. Those two have been linked to his services, and he's having a very good season for them as well. And they need to lean into the full rebuild over there in Chicago. They have a lot of players, a lot of young players to play with. So Sacramento doing weird stuff. The Bulls finally leaning into what they should have done several years ago. And then the Spurs are the big winners. They get a start. They're pushing for the play-in. They have a nice, young, deep roster. Very, very interesting what they have going down there in Texas, because everything weird is happening in Texas. Apparently, Houston's on the fringes of maybe getting Kevin Durant. San Antonio's getting De'Aaron Fox, and Dallas just did the weirdest thing of all. And I don't think that the Mavericks are done yet either. They have to go get another guard. I mean, they have Spencer Dinwiddie and Kyrie Irving, so a lot of movement I think within the next 20 hours or so.
They did go and get Caleb Martin for Quentin Grimes
That's right. They did.
earlier. Yes. So, yeah, you're right. Instead of actually getting a guard that you said that they needed, they went out and got a forward. But again, defensively, I think they're really going all in on the defensive side of the ball in Dallas. So it looks like that's what they're going to try and hang their hat on as far as to try and lock teams down. I can't say I blame them once you bring AD over there as your number 4, although the stats say AD is probably best at a number 5 position, but okay, he's happier at the number 4 position. So,
Sure.
and he did win a title as the number 4. Okay, 4.5 because that when it's crunch time, guess who was playing the center for us in the bubble? But be that as it may, I don't want to go into semantics. He wants it. He's got it now in Dallas, and I wish him and thank him for everything and wish him the best on that. But yeah, all the moves right now, a lot of stuff on the peripheral, as always is an NBA trade deadline. There's always stuff on the peripheral. Do you see any more big moves? Because the latest sources saying Kevin Durant is kind of very cool on a return to Golden State. Jimmy Butler is still sitting in his Miami home saying, please take me, somebody, please take me. Do you see any other big names or big moves happening on the way before we really get into particulars on what may be needed for some teams out there?
So the Butler situation is very weird. He's gone so far as to say to the Miami Heat, "Hey, I'm healthy. I can play. Why don't I play?" And the Heat are not going to allow that. Pat Riley is petty enough to not allow that to happen, and punish him for what he has done. So the wild card is Kevin Durant. He does not want to go back to Golden State. I was told there was a lot of momentum with that trade, and that really the two sides want it, but the holdup is Kevin Durant not wanting to go there, and obviously Golden State's not going to take in a player who doesn't want to be there. I
Yeah.
don't know of any other team that would want him. I think Brian Windhorst said maybe the Heat would take him. I don't know what mental and financial gymnastics you have to go through to make that happen. So I don't see it. I see him sticking in Phoenix with Devin
Mm-hmm.
Booker, with Bradley Beal, because he's not getting moved either. Nobody wants Bradley Beal.
He
And
doesn't want him to go.
he
Remember,
doesn't
he's
want to
got that.
go.
Yeah. Yeah.
Correct. He doesn't want to go. He's not willing to go anywhere, and I don't blame him. He's got a sweet deal with a no trade clause and 40 some odd $1 million. That's a good position to be in. Selfishly, not helpful for anybody else involved. It's also interesting that the Washington Wizards really ruined both the Warriors and the Suns with this no trade clause. I mean, they're just doing damage not only to themselves but across the league as well. Um, and
That's okay. They ruined us with the Westbrook trade. So there you go.
They did, yes. And speaking of that, with Kyle Kuzma, I didn't talk about that. I don't understand. I don't know how you feel. I don't understand why the Milwaukee Bucks did that, because I don't necessarily think they got better. They're basically asking Kyle Kuzma to do all of the things he hasn't been doing this year, which is shoot well and play with energy and not be, a negative asset. And then the Wizards, I think, could have traded him for something younger. I mean, all respect to Chris Middleton, but double ankle surgery and kind of washed. There's a reason the Bucks were willing to move him. I don't necessarily know if either team got better in that.
And according to reports, Washington is planning to keep Middleton, which befuddles me into, just like, okay, I don't know why. I don't know what purpose that serves. Do you want to be the leading scorer on a team that's winning 10 games? Okay, that sounds thrilling for him. But yeah, Kuzma, when he played a couple weeks ago in Los Angeles, just absolutely looked miserable. Absolutely looked miserable. I think he regrets not taking the trade last year to Dallas when Dallas reached out and offered
Mhm.
to go ahead and get him, and he refused. So I think that's on him. But now going to Milwaukee, he is not the player that I think a lot of people were hoping for that he'd develop into. At least when he was with the Lakers, that promise was there. Hopefully he was getting better with his jump shot. His defense which had been his first couple of years in the league, had been atrocious. He actually became a solid defender and was part of that great Lakers run in the bubble. And then that parlayed into the big contract that he got, and then absolutely just has fallen off a cliff ever since then. So I don't know what Milwaukee thinks it's going to find in him. They're going to find a lot of shots that he's going to take, that's for sure, because he is a shot taker. He's not essentially, though, always a shot maker, but we'll see. Maybe his attitude will change and he'll become the player that he once was and the player that a lot of people were hoping he would be.
Yeah, change of scenery is a phrase that a lot of people like to use in whatever industry we're in. And I don't necessarily believe in that all the time. I mean, look at Bradley Beal. He just needs a change of scenery. Washington's miserable. They're bad every year. Goes and plays with Kevin Durant and Devin Booker, and he's a bench player and isn't being very helpful to the franchise. Not that he has any
Yeah.
incentive to, but that change of scenery didn't change a whole lot. He still is quite hurt all the time, and the attitude has always been kind of middling, even when he was playing with John Wall. So I don't necessarily know if change of scenery is always going to work. It's a nice thing to say to kind of cope with what you've just done. I think that the Bucks could have gotten something better for Chris Middleton, um, because there are so many balls still in the air across the league, and there's still a lot of trades that I think could be made. Um, the Cavs are in on a wing. Cam Johnson was one of the earliest names in the deadline was, where is Cam Johnson going to go? Because obviously he's not staying with Brooklyn, and the Cavs are in on Cam Johnson. I think every team is probably in on Cam Johnson in some fashion. He's a 6'8"
Yes.
wing who can shoot. Oklahoma City
And
could
he's playing
basically
probably better. He's playing probably better than he ever has in his entire career.
probably, and big wings who can shoot are a hot commodity. I think Oklahoma City could pretty much trade for whoever they want with all the draft capital that they have, and that could be a Cam Johnson team. The Cavs are in there as a Cam Johnson team. There's been a lot of teams listed for that. I'll go ahead and say off the beaten path that the biggest name to be traded, because I'll say Jimmy's going to stick. I just have a gut feeling, and I'll say KD's going to stick too. Just have a gut feeling. This is a weird deadline. Let's go with the least obvious thing to happen. I'll say Brandon Ingram gets moved. He gets traded to either Atlanta or Toronto. That'll be the biggest move for the rest of the deadline.
Once again, it is Mike Anguilano. Please go ahead and stop by all of his adventures today, including Fear the Sword podcast, covering the Cleveland Cavs, also as well the Palace of Pistons podcast on the Believe Network, and, of course, his Substack, which you need to subscribe to today to get the latest news and information on the Detroit Pistons at palaceofpistons.com. And that's something I want to ask you, is the Detroit Pistons, let's start off with them first and then go into the Cleveland Cavs. But
Sure.
Detroit, a team on the come up. They're in a situation. They remind me a lot of a situation like last year, like San Antonio is now. The situation where they've taken a step up. They've taken a step towards relevancy, right around 500. We saw what Houston did last year. They really, from a afterthought to a team right around 500, but you could see the potential. And then the next season really realize that potential into a top 4 seed. Detroit has all the earmarks that they could find themselves in that type of similar rise. This year, I don't expect a whole lot from them, but they are tasting the playoffs and the play-in for the first time in a while. Mike, is there anything that Detroit might be interested in doing?
So we've talked about this a lot on the Palace Pistons podcast, and we're of the mindset that no big move is going to be made this deadline. It's going to be fringe type moves. Backup point guard would be great. They're currently trotting out Marcus Sasser, which is not conducive to winning because he doesn't really run an offense like you would need a backup point guard to. By the way, Markel Fultz is blackballed from the NBA for some reason. I don't understand why, but that would be a great fit for a team like Detroit. They could use a backup big. I know they have Paul Reed. I know that Isaiah Stewart has been pegged as the backup 5, but he's kind of that Derek Williams in-betweener, plays the 4 kind of okay, but he's too big, and can play the 5 okay, but he's too small. So they could look at a backup big. The question with the Pistons is, what are you going to do with Jaden Ivey and Jalen Duren in terms of contract extensions? That's really the next question they have. I don't think they're going to be super active at the deadline. They got KJ Martin. I believe there's a chance he could still be rerouted to another team. They basically took on KJ in 2 seconds to help out the Philadelphia tax situation. I don't
Mm-hmm.
foresee them making any big moves, but the question will be, what do they do with Jaden Ivey and Jalen Duren? One of those two guys could be moved next season, next offseason, to do what, like you said, the Spurs are doing now, which is go get a star to pair next to Cade Cunningham. I think that's the next step for the Pistons.
So if that's the case, my friend, and once again, Mike, I truly appreciate you stopping by. There's another team that you cover very extensively, and that's the Cleveland Cavs. And for years, it was always about, well, what if these four could actually start working together, start meshing together, start playing together as far as the top four of Garland, Mitchell, Allen, and Mobley. And whether it was for injury reasons or just coach reasons, whatever reasons there were, they just never quite meshed
Mm-hmm.
until this season. Until this
Yep.
season, where it is seemingly, for the most part, recent times they've kind of been falling a little bit back to the pack, but it's been kind of Shangri-La. They've all seemed to gel really well. They're all playing at a really high level, and obviously Cleveland, it went from a team that many people said, I don't know if this is actually going to work out, to a team that is right there amongst the best in the NBA. Your thoughts on what they need to do and where they need to go next, because it looks like they could be Boston's main challenger in the Eastern Conference.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you said that they're Boston's main challenger, whereas a lot of Cavs fans were hoping that that would be the reverse at this point of the season, is that, Boston would be their challenger. But yeah, they lost to Boston last night in a tough game that was pretty much decided after the first quarter. You go down by, 13 points in the first quarter against Boston. It's gonna be hard to dig out of that hole. The Cavs are clicking on all cylinders. I mean, they're having a down streak at 40-10. It's really, really quite the season that they've had. Is that at 40-10, we're thinking about, well, they haven't played that well lately. They have been firing on all cylinders with mostly the same rosters last year, which does give some credence to that. The change of coach is what caused all this, and going from JB Bickerstaff to Kenny Atkinson has paid dividends. The Cavs were clearly exposed though last night on their size at the wing. And they don't have a big wing to play against the big wings that they're probably going to be playing against in the playoffs. So if you look at the New York Knicks with OG Anunoby and Mikal Bridges, and obviously Boston with Tatum and Jaylen Brown and Kristaps Porzingis as well, they don't have a big wing. Isaac Okoro, 6'5". Max Strus can play up, but that's asking a lot of him, and he has his own injury history. The problem is that their best wing is Dean Wade. And I know that Zach Lowe loves Dean Wade, and the Cavs love Dean Wade too. The Cavs are 30-5 this year with Dean Wade. They're 10-5 without Dean Wade. 30-5 with Dean Wade is pretty insane. And you would think that he was the best player on the team given that record disparity, but it's more of a symptom and less a direct cause. They need a big wing. That's why they're in on DeAndre Hunter. That's why they're in on Cam Johnson. I just wrote a piece for Fear the Sword about how I don't think DeAndre Hunter is the best option for them. I think they need to aim higher and go get Cam Johnson. Um, but they need a wing. 6'8" for both of those guys. They need somebody to put next to Mobley and Allen. Kind of a connector. They've been searching for a connector since LeBron left. They don't have a guy who can rebound and shoot, and isn't going to demand the ball a whole lot. And both Hunter and Cam Johnson can do that. So I think they need to really scour to see if they can get one of those two guys. I would prefer Cam Johnson personally, but it's pretty clear that they need an upgrade on the wing, because you just can't trust Isaac Okoro to be healthy this year. You can't trust Dean Wade to be healthy, and you can't trust Max Strus to play up like that pretty consistently.
Hunter started off the season really well after having an injury-plagued career, and actually, with the drafting of Shea, kind of had to take a step back, doing a lot of stuff off the bench for them. But he was averaging at one time close to 20 points a game for the Atlanta Hawks, and the Atlanta Hawks, in their situation, I'm not counting out a trade for Trae Young, because their team might be heading in a different direction as far as what the Jalen Johnson injury is a killer for them. I think that pretty much concluded their season right there.
Yeah.
So maybe it's time to start thinking about the direction you guys want to go in, or Atlanta wants to go in. I talked with my friend Legend, who covers the Atlanta Hawks, and yeah, he was thinking that that's a possibility now more than ever. But DeAndre Hunter is a smaller piece of that equation. He has played well. He's stayed healthy this year, which is the biggest thing. And it's not exactly the greatest contract in the world, but he might be, like you said, a fit for Cleveland that they just can't pass up. But Cam Johnson, ultimately, I think is the bigger prize, but also the guy that probably would command the most in a trade.
Yeah, definitely. And the Cavs are limited on their assets. They basically have Karis LeVert's expiring $16 million deal. They have a 2031 first, and they have rookie Jalen Tyson, who they picked 20th overall, who's pretty good. Um, I don't think they're going to be able to afford Cam Johnson for all the reasons that you pretty much said. He is the better player, and other teams can outbid. His contract is a little bit better. DeAndre Hunter is injury plagued for most of his career, lots of knee problems, and it just spooks me that you have wing depth issues now, and you're going to trade for an injury prone wing who's going to be paid, 20 plus mil for the next 3 seasons. But when you're in this position that the Cavs are in at 40-10. The East is pretty open. Boston looks a little vulnerable. The Knicks look a little vulnerable. Philly has completely cratered. Now's the time to, push your chips in and go all in. That 2031 first, does it really matter? I mean, what are you going to be looking at in 2031? You're still going to have Mobley, you're still going to have Garland. You're going to be probably pretty good. You can't think about that right now. You have an opportunity to win a championship or at least get to the NBA Finals right now. Push your chips in and go after Cam Johnson. And you know what? Player value across the league has totally shifted now after the Luka Doncic trade. Completely changed in my mind. So if the Nets want two firsts and other stuff for Cam, they wanted two firsts and stuff for Dorian Finney-Smith, and as you guys know, that's not what they got in return. So um, I think the Cavs should try for it and do their best to get Cam. But if not, Hunter is a fine consolation prize.
Once again, it is Mike Anguilano. Please go ahead and stop on by his great places for NBA knowledge, including the Fear the Sword podcast, covering the Cleveland Cavaliers, also as well the Palace of Pistons podcast on the Believe Network, and of course his Substack, palaceofpistons.com. Yeah, just a lot of things to think about. And then I know they're talking about in our chat, and truly appreciate everyone joining us. We'll be here to about 7 p.m. Eastern. So just wanted to let everybody know that. But also tonight, we'll be having a special show of the Inside Sports Fantasy Football covering the Super Bowl. Then after that, the Lakers Fast Break will be doing an NBA trade deadline special late tonight. So check out that later this evening for your viewing pleasure. But before we get to that, it is right now, Mike. I want to go ahead and say you said Jimmy Butler and Kevin Durant will not be on the move. Kevin Durant, sources say, did turn down the Golden State opportunity when it was presented to him. It's so funny because Phoenix, if this works out like you're talking about, Phoenix could probably be the biggest losers in all this. Golden State won't be far behind, but Phoenix could be the biggest loser in all this.
It could be. And they did this to themselves with Bradley Beal and doing what they did to get Beal. Sounded okay when they traded for him. Now it's really biting them in the butt. And sticking with KD, there was a report that had come out just a couple of moments ago about Brian Windhorst saying that the Heat could offer Butler and assets for Kevin Durant, and the Suns would be interested in that. Does Kevin Durant want to do that? Maybe he doesn't want to be moved at all, and that's kind of what I'm getting at from all of this is that he doesn't want to move. Period. And the Suns being stuck with Kevin Durant is, not the worst place to be in. Um, but their ability to make sweeping changes for a pretty mediocre team is just very limited. Golden State paralyzed. The front office is paralyzed by decision making. Very different from the Bob Myers days, where they seem to make every correct move one after the other. This new front office plus Joe Lacob just not having any idea how they want to, do the transition of era like the Lakers just did with Luka Doncic. That's how you do a transition of power from, one empire to the next. They don't have that capability. They don't know if they want to pay Jonathan Kuminga. They don't know if they want to trade him because it could bite them. They don't know if they want to trade Moses Moody because you don't know what he is. They don't have any, you know, they don't have a plan for how they want to bridge Steph Curry's career while also being competitive. And it's about to bite them in the butt because they could have had Zach LaVine for like nothing. And they opted to go after Butler, who doesn't want to go there, and Katie, who doesn't want to go there either. So they've really hamstrung their capabilities of getting anybody that's going to push them into a playoff position this year.
I'll tell you what, though, Mike, your insight has always been most illuminating every time you come on the show, and I just truly appreciate you stopping on by. But we still got a few minutes left. And again, do you see any buyers or sellers that we're not talking about? I said Orlando. I know that a lot of people had talked about as far as buyers and sellers, and I was proposing this because Orlando, which started out the season very, very strong, was positioning themselves as a number 3 team in the Eastern Conference, fell on hard time with those injuries to Wagner and also as well Banchero. They got them back now, but they've never found their mojo. They've continued to lose. And the fact is, they just cannot score points. One of my analysts that come on the show, Alfred Esmond, who covers the Orlando Magic, he is admitted to that. I mean, obviously, that's the reason why, one of the main reasons why they lost in the playoffs last season to Cleveland is because they just can't muster enough offense. So if I'm Rob Pelinka, I have proposed out there that one of the places I would look if I really want to go in all in now, and that's the question you got to ask yourself. You have a limited amount of assets, so you're not really gaining that much if you go to the offseason. You've got Luka and LeBron now playing at a high level. Why not try to go in all out and I'll go all in now to try and find what you need to find, whether it's perimeter defense, as some have said, whether it's more big men, as some others have said. I'd probably want to go, and first off, one of the best teams in the defensive area in the NBA is Orlando. They've got a lot of pieces there that they can move. Your thoughts about Orlando being possibly a surprise buyer or seller in this trade deadline season?
Um, I haven't really thought about Orlando, and that kind of tells you all you need to know about the Magic's season, just completely injury plagued. I still think they're a guard short. I like Jalen Suggs a lot, and he's had a much better season this year. And obviously, Paolo
Mm-hmm.
and Franz Wagner are just excellent players that almost every team in the NBA would love to have on their team. Um, but they are clearly missing a guard. I don't know how that plays out. They were linked to Trae Young last offseason when there was all this fervor about him changing agencies. But it's clear they need a guard. Um, and it's clear that they have some bigs that can be parted with. The Lakers are certainly in need of a center. Uh, Goga Batazzi or Wendell Carter Jr. would be fantastic options on this Lakers team at
Mm-hmm.
center. I'm not a Jackson Hayes guy. I'll just put that out there. I don't
Don't
think that
worry, none of
Jackson
us
Hayes.
are.
Okay,
Yes, he,
Jackson
him
Hayes.
and him and his defensive awareness seemingly are nowhere near each other. He'll
No,
be on one side, and usually the basketball will be on the other. And it's just, yeah, he is a third string center that's nice at 2 million in a pinch. He does one thing really well. He pick and rolls to the basket really nicely, and that's it. And if he's your starting center, that doesn't speak well for your front line. I'll just leave it at that.
right now to link my Detroit Pistons, the Lakers still have their 2031
2030,
first,
2030, yes, 2031 first, which
2031
now is
first.
not as appealing as it once was on Friday.
Correct.
I'll just leave it at that.
If I'm the Lakers, I'm canvassing everybody for a center, and I would poke around and ask the Detroit Pistons, "Hey, how much do you like Jalen Duren? He's young. He fits Luka's timeline. He's a great rim runner with Kate Cunningham. What do the Pistons feel about Jalen Duren?" Same thing with Wendell Carter. He's a pretty good rim runner. He's a pretty good defender. Has had some durability concerns, but those are the kinds of moves. If I'm Rob Pelinka, I would be canvassing the league because now you got to change your timeline a little bit. You can't be looking for the 35-year-old center, just to get you by while AD and LeBron, try for one more year. Now you have to look to the future. You have Luka Doncic. presumably for the next decade plus. I think a guy like Jalen Duren, who's young and who would blossom, has blossomed next to Cade Cunningham this year. If you do want to dangle that first and a piece or two, um, or some combination there, that would be very intriguing if I'm the Los Angeles Lakers, because now you really are bridging more of your positions to fit two timelines.
Okay. And again, just for me, you have a motivated Luka who absolutely wants to prove the Mavs wrong. You have a motivated LeBron who's playing still at a high level. I think yes, while you have 10 years with Luka still ahead of you, most likely, it's this time right now where you have those two playing at a very motivated level as a matchup in the playoffs for anyone in a 7-game series. It could still be a lot of trouble for them. And to go ahead and shore up some of the things on the front line that's needed, maybe perimeter defense as well. You could look into those, make those moves out. You don't have many assets in the first place. I mean, we
Right.
talk about a lot of these fans that are out there in the talk say, "Wait, well, it's time. You can wait. You can wait." Okay, so you gain one first round draft pick and second round draft pick this offseason. We don't have many big expiring contracts to go ahead that are coming off the books this season. Next season, we do, but this season, we don't. So, right now,
Right.
if something's offered to you, you might need to take a serious look at it because absolutely the Lakers have a chance now in any series with Luka and LeBron playing like they are, or like in the case of Luka, like we know he can.
Yeah, can you imagine being the 2 seed and all of a sudden the play-in Lakers roll up with, Luka and LeBron? That's not a good day if you're the 2 seed. That's a fight for whoever is gonna end up in the 2 seed in the Western Conference. They're just offensive juggernauts. Um, are you upset about Jonas Valanciunas going to the Sacramento Kings? Because that was a target for the LA Lakers, and he was not acquired for that much, a couple of second rounders and a draft pick.
Okay. Are
Do
you
you
still with me,
think
Mike?
that Yep, I'm here.
Okay.
Are you glad that you didn't get Jonas? Do you think the Lakers dodged a bullet? Because I know that that was a name that the Lakers were in on.
Yeah, I was higher on Jonas when he was with New Orleans. Now he's got that 3-year deal. It's only 10 million per, but it's just what can he give you at 35? He's bigger guy, heavier set. He has slowed down. We already seen with big guys like Nurkic in Phoenix what happens when you get to a certain age and you just cannot do the switching. You drop coverage, things of that nature. Yeah, I'm kind of glad that they didn't get Jonas because it just absolutely is not the Jonas from New Orleans that you're hoping to get. With Washington, he's done okay. And I think Sacramento is going to put him nicely alongside Sabonis, but I don't know exactly what they're going to do with those two meshing together. I think again, you've got to think bigger. You got to think maybe younger, that's more developed. I know that Norm
Mhm.
is saying, and others are saying, well, let's wait, let's wait. Again, you will not be accruing many more assets in the offseason to try right away to fit the exact team around Luka. Again, if you're presented with an offer to get a big or two bigs or a perimeter defender that can change the dynamic of this team sooner rather than later, I'd say again, this is the time you want to seriously consider with LeBron and Luka playing at a high level that you might want to look at going ahead and cashing your chips down because the Lakers don't have many chips to start off with and won't be getting many more this offseason.
You're right. If you could get a guy like Goga, who I think is very underrated in Orlando, he flies under the radar because he plays in Orlando. He's played
Mhm.
quite well this year for the
Yes.
Orlando Magic, and that's like the perfect middle ground of production and not needing to completely break the bank to get him. I don't know if the Magic are willing to do that. I think they still want to make the playoffs, not just the play in. They feel like they're a playoff team. Um, so maybe they just totally reject that. But I do think that if they can acquire some guard help in the process, because Cole Anthony has not been fantastic this year. He's been up and down. Jalen Suggs has you know, an injury history. Contavious Caldwell Pope has not been as good as he was in Denver. If they could find some guard help in the process and move on from one of their bigs, that could be very enticing for them.
And that's something that we'll have to go ahead and look at again. A lot of people right there still very hedging their bets and saying to themselves, you know what, they don't, this momentum that the Lakers have now, they don't want to go ahead and continue it. That's fine. That's your choice. Again, I
Sure.
disagree. I think at this point in time, you need to look at it. Yes, defense is going to be an issue with them, but that's why you're looking at if you're Rob. I don't still have enough faith in Rob yet. Yes, he did pull off the trade. Compliments to him, but he has a very up and down this guy. I mean, people seem to forget this is the guy for the Russell Westbrook trade. So yeah,
Yep.
there is that history there that he is managed when you give him time in the offseason, he hasn't been able to build around the right people around him. So it's going to take more for me to convince me that he's going to be able to do that. And again, if the offers are out there and you have limited assets, it's just something I think that they should go ahead and look into. I think those who say wait, 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 and I'm like thinking to myself, when you're one of your best players is above the age of 40, you're thinking, okay, let's move on from. They're thinking LeBron beyond LeBron, which is fine. I have no problems with that there because LeBron's tenure is closing in on a sunset. I get it. I understand that, but what other number two are you going to get right now? People are just okay. Giannis is going to come here or whatnot. Now you're counting on every star to come in here as soon as LeBron leaves, and uh, I'm sure one will probably drop out of the sky because it seemingly does all the time for the Lakers. But yeah, I don't know. It just at this point in time, we don't have many assets to go through, but still, Rob's on the phone trying to do something to shore up the areas of need, and I'm hoping he'll get the job done, Mike.
Yeah, look, he's just bought some goodwill for getting Luka Doncic for from what I've heard, other teams would have given up a lot more to get Luka. Like the Magic would have given up Paolo in firsts potentially for Luka. Um, he's that good of a player. So he's earned a little bit of goodwill in my book. If he can
Mhm.
navigate this deadline and get a center out of it, like a Goga um, or a Wendell Carter, it's very possible that the Lakers have put themselves in a position to make a deep playoff run. I don't know if they're up there with Oklahoma City Thunder. That's a very deep team that's only going to get deeper when Chet Holmgren comes back. Um,
Mhm.
so that's tough. But you have Luca and LeBron, and for a lot of potential scenarios, that is good enough to at least keep you competitive in pretty much every situation.
Once again, it is Mike Anguilano. Please go ahead and check out what he's doing today at Fear the Sword podcast, right there, covering the Cleveland Cavs and the Palace of Pistons podcast, right there on the Believe Network. We've talked about so many teams right here. Again, Oklahoma City, they did get Daniel Tice, as far as that, as far as a backup upon backup for that team. And of course, to get New Orleans out of the salary tax. Again, they were allergic to that. And they have that distinction of never actually achieving that level, which I guess is, tells you all you need to know there. But what other top teams do you think seeing make a move? I know New York has also, like the Lakers, limited assets. There's also the Boston Celtics. Obviously they're going back on a trying to do their back-to-back deal. What do you think might happen over the course of the next few hours or so that with some of these top teams in both conferences? Memphis is somebody we have not talked about, and they're quietly gotten everybody healthy back together, and they're in second place in the Western Conference. Houston,
Mhm.
they could think their time is now with all the young assets they have. And then, of course, Denver, they're sitting there. People try to write them off, and they still got one of the best players, if not the best player on the planet, in Nikola Jokic.
Yeah, so those top teams, I'll start in the East. I feel like the Knicks are pretty much set in stone. They're not going to be making any big moves. There's some rumblings of Mitchell Robinson being traded, but that's more of because he's an injury concern, and they need some depth at center.
Mm-hmm.
That's a guy that the Lakers could swing on too. If the price is really going to be that low. Boston is getting under the tax. That's why they traded Jaden Springer earlier today. I think that shaves their tax bill down like $15 million just by moving on from Jaden Springer. And we already talked about the Cavaliers out west. Memphis is a team that is in on Jimmy Butler. They've been very interested in it. If Jimmy is really that desperate, then maybe they do make that kind of trade, and that pushes them up into a different echelon as well if they can acquire Jimmy Butler. Oklahoma City has tons of picks to play with. They are one of those chemistry teams that everything seems to be clicking for them, and maybe they just decide to stand pat as well and get people healthy. They'll get Chet back eventually as well. Denver, they're kind of hamstrung as well. They don't have all these assets either. In fact, they were in on Jonas Valanciunas. The only reason they didn't get him is they don't have 2 second-rounders to trade. So
Hmm.
their pathway to trading anything is really Michael Porter Jr. And do you want to give up a young wing and are you able to move a young wing with that kind of contract to get another player similar to him? I don't know if they could do that. This might be one of those years where they're just simply not that good or not as good as what they expect to be. So the top teams, it's very interesting. That's a good point. A lot of these teams that we're talking about, the Bucks, the Warriors, the Heat, these aren't teams that are like in the playoff race. These are teams that are trying to get into the playoff race. They just so happen to be, you know, trying to wheel and deal some of the biggest stars in the league. The top teams seem fairly secure in what they have, which is kind of different. It's a lot of these small market teams, Memphis, Cleveland, and Oklahoma City.
Absolutely. I know SB wants us to talk a little bit more about the Bucks. Their team, I mean, their window is very much closing. They're an older team, one of the oldest in the NBA. They
Yep.
did get a little bit younger today with Kuzma, but like you said, I don't know if they essentially got better, especially if this is the Kuzma from Washington Wizards. His tenure there has not been uh, pretty much a standout ever since he signed that contract. But what are your thoughts on Milwaukee? Again, they've got a very old nucleus, so the time is now for them. Do you think they're going to make any magic before all is said and done before the trade deadline? And then also, SB is an Indiana Pacers fan. Indiana, Miles Turner's name has been on the name many people's lists out there. I don't know why you would trade your starting center when you're trying to battle for a playoff spot, but I understand he's going to be a free agent at the end of the season. Your thoughts on both Indiana and Milwaukee?
Um, I don't like the Kyle Kuzma trade. We talked about a little bit earlier. I don't know if either team really got better. I would say that the team
Mhm.
that didn't get Kyle Kuzma got better. So, the Wizards get off of that contract. They do have Chris Middleton and they could, end up flipping him or whatnot. They are playing the rebuild card kind of okay. They're going to lose a ton of games, but that's kind of the point. I just don't know if the Bucks got better enough to have cashed in one of their also again very few chips that they could cash in. They moved Middleton for a guy they're really hoping does a lot of things that he hasn't done this year, which is shoot well, have a good attitude, be aggressive on the boards, play good defense. I don't know if he's going to flip a switch internally and suddenly become the guy that um, he can be and has shown at times, but it's a gamble. I would have rather them going after somebody like Jimmy Butler, take a swing on Jimmy Butler. Maybe they did, and that just never leaked out. They were one of the teams in on supposedly in on Bradley Beal as well. I'm a little bit less interested in that just because of the cap figure, but I'm
Mhm.
not entirely sure that the Bucks are done either. Brooke Lopez is another guy that they could move. Bobby Portis has come up as another guy that they could move. I think they're going to try to make at least one more move to shore up some other parts of their roster, and I think they need to. But you're banking a lot on Kyle Kuzma, and that's not necessarily a bet that I would like to be in the position to make.
I did want to say, though, as was pointed out in the chat, I want to give some credit to Dustin. As was mentioned through the tweets and whatnot, it does get Milwaukee, this Kuzma trade, under the second tax apron. So they're a little bit more flexible on what they can trade and do. So we may see some more movement from them before all is said and done, indeed. But yeah, absolutely looking forward to seeing what's going to go on. But before we head on out, got a huge audience today as far as that's concerned. It's for a mid-afternoon deal for us here on the West Coast, early evening for you. But I know you got to go ahead and cover your teams here in a little bit. Before we head
Yep.
on out, you got to go ahead and give the cheap pub out there. go ahead and tell everybody what's going on with your awesome shows and where they can find you as well.
Yes, you can find me on Twitter/X at Anguilano M22. You can find all my work at Fear the Sword for covering the Cleveland Cavaliers, and you can find me at PalaceOfPistons.com. Please subscribe to our Substack if you're a Pistons fan, or if you just want to be kept in the know on what's happening around the NBA with the Detroit Pistons. We have a Monday article that comes out every Monday, written by yours truly. We have a podcast every Wednesday. I'm sorry, every Friday, and then an article that comes out every Wednesday just on a random topic from one of our editors that typically does pretty well, talking about lineup changes, more of the semantics of the team. So you can find me there at palspistons.com as well. And you can find me at Fear the Sword. And like I said, you can find me on Twitter/X. And I just got into Blue Sky as well, so
Yay!
I'm
A
on
subscriber.
that place as well. Since a lot of our NBA folks have migrated over to there, I figured I should be on both. So you can find me there.
Absolutely. Great to have you here, my friend. Great to be a part of this trade deadline coverage. And absolutely, if you want to go ahead, please support him. Starting off with his Twitter, Anguilano M22, right there for you. Also, as well, Fear the Sword, Palace of Pistons. Can't be easier than that. I'll put the stuff in the description for everyone out there. I'll go ahead and make sure I get everything taken care of on that as far as on the back end. But before we head on out, any last thoughts on the NBA trade deadline? Do you think it's going to be a crazy one tomorrow morning? Do you think it's going to be kind of light? You think most of the damage has already been done? Let me hear your thoughts on that before we head on out.
Um, I think we're going to get some more trades. I don't think we're going to get one in the middle of the night, a crazy one. I think that tomorrow will be a frenzy at about the 2 o'clock Eastern time mark, and then it'll be quiet for most of the morning. I think there's going to be a lot of organizations still trying to convince their stars to get a move on. You might still see Kevin Durant being kind of pushed and nudged out. You might still see Jimmy Butler nudging to go to a team. I think a lot of things are going to change over the next 24 hours. Maybe that, Butler and Durant staying put thing is completely kaput in about 12 hours, and it would not surprise me one bit. I do think there's a lot of jostling happening within those three teams.
There you go. Well, it's going to be, I think, a very interesting one. Couldn't be any worse than a couple of years ago when the Lakers did nothing. It was kind of slow. And I had my, I don't know if you know Laker Tom, who used to be
Yeah.
a lot on the show, and he comes still on the weekends. But I really, as I said before, he got so upset at Rob Pelinka. He was getting red in the face. He went on the diatribe, something that Joe Soro might actually even appreciate. Yeah, went on a diatribe. He was getting red. I thought he was actually going to have a heart attack because he's 80. To give you an idea, he's just right
Wow.
there because I was just worried because he was so pissed off at Rob Pelinka. So, yeah, absolutely. But again, yeah, I think it's going to be interesting. We'll see you over the next. I think it might slow down a little bit during the games, but we'll see what
Yeah.
happens overnight. We'll see what happens tomorrow morning. I'm going to be here to cover it at 9 a.m. Pacific time. We'll be on. It's already scheduled. Tonight, we'll be talking the NBA preview deadline special as well. We're going to be also going to go ahead and preview the Super Bowl. Both those things we're going to be covering later tonight. Joe Soro will be here, so don't worry, everyone. You'll get your rants then. You'll also hopefully get others to stop on by as well. Chris Lardieri, our football expert, will be on to talk the Super Bowl. So, yeah, definitely looking forward to seeing what's going to go on. But, Mike, again, you continue the great work that you're doing. But, again, please don't let it be such a long time between you and I, whether you need me there or you stop on by here. Your insight and knowledge is just greatly appreciated by everyone on this show, my friend.
Thank you very much, sir. Yes, I will make it a point to come on before the end of the season. How about that?
You got it. You got it, especially with Cleveland, the way they're doing. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Again, I said it last night. I think Cleveland has a real shot as long as they have the home court advantage. And I'll leave it at that. But they're 4.5 games up. They can't choke that, can they?
Don't even throw that into the universe.
Okay,
Don't even
I
say
won't
that.
indeed. I won't indeed. But it is, of course, Mike Anguilano. Please go ahead and support him today at Fear the Sword, Palace of Pistons on the Believe Network. Also, as well, palaceofpistons.com, his Substack there, and Anguilano M22. on Twitter. I'll put all that stuff in the description here. Want to go ahead and thank you so much, Mike, and hopefully you will return soon to us right here for some NBA observations. We'll be back later tonight, again, covering the Super Bowl, the NBA trade deadline, and more later this evening, right here from your friends at the Lakers Fast Break Podcast.